A simple woman missed her flight to help an old man, unaware he owned the airline. The morning sun pressed soft bands of gold across the massive panes of glass at John F. Kennedy International Airport, laying light over the terrazzo like warm paint and catching the silver edges of suitcase handles as crowds streamed past the cafes and departure boards. Baristas called names above the hiss of steam wands. A toddler in dinosaur pajamas dragged a stuffed stegosaurus past a flight of crisply dressed executives. Somewhere a gate agent laughed too loudly. A bright sound swallowed by the soundtrack of rolling wheels, boarding alerts, and the tinny ring of cell phones. In the middle of this orchestral rush moved Claire Donovan, late 30s denim jacket faded where her elbows bent, a white blouse ironed but old, her hair pulled back into a no-nonsense ponytail that revealed a face worn by early mornings and compassion. The only luxe detail on her was a thin gold band on a chain around her neck, the ring her mother had worn during double shifts at the diner, and later during chemo. Claire wore it when she needed courage. She carried a scuffed leather tote with the soft give of something that had lived hard but faithfully. Tucked inside were 3 printed copies of her presentation, a sandwich from the night before wrapped in wax paper, and a notebook thick with dog-eared pages. She had a ticket for Flight 2018 to Los Angeles, Gate 17A, departure in 20 minutes. It had taken months to save for that seat. Overtime hours at the community hospital in Ohio, extra weekends helping a neighbor with physical therapy, a stubborn refusal to buy anything new unless it was bleach or socks. The hospital's social worker had nominated her to speak at a conference on practical, low-cost improvements in elder care, and although she wasn't a nurse practitioner or a research star, they'd invited her to present a short talk about simple routines and human connection. "You'll be great," her supervisor had said, pressing a $50 bill into her hand to help with cab fare. "They need what you know. We all do." She wanted to do them proud, to bring back something useful, to prove how care done with humility could be scaled without losing its heart. Claire checked the time, took 2 long gulps of coffee, and weaved toward 17A. As she passed a wall of seats facing a bank of windows, she noticed an elderly man in a charcoal suit that had once been expensive and was now rumpled from the indignities of travel. His hair was white and thin, combed back but splayed at the crown. On the floor near his knees squatted an overstuffed roller bag, the kind that looked like it contained a forest of paper. He reached for it, failed to grip the handle, and sat back with a defeated breath, his fingers trembling as they groped for a water bottle wedged in the side pocket. Travelers flowed past him like a river parting around a rock, glancing and then looking away. Claire slowed. The voice of urgency in her head said, "Move. You'll miss your flight, your chance." Another voice, quieter but more insistent, the one that tugged her toward patients who needed an extra minute, said, "Stay." She put her coffee on the seat and knelt. "Can I help?" The old man looked up, startled, pale blue eyes bright but tired. "If you wouldn't mind," he said. "I think my bag gained weight while I wasn't looking." "They do that," Claire said, smiling. She lifted the roller onto the adjacent chair with practiced care, distributing the load so the strap didn't bite. The bag was dense with bulky binders and a parchment envelope sealed with a crisp red sticker. "Are you traveling alone?" He nodded and fussed with a handkerchief that had seen better days. "My assistant usually keeps me organized. Family emergency today. I thought I could manage." Foolish pride. He twisted the water bottle. It slipped, splashed, and blotted his jacket in an irregular dark flower. Claire's hands moved before her brain did. Tissues from her tote. Blotting, not wiping, warm voice saying, "It's okay, sips, not gulps." The micro-encouragement of someone who had coached shaky hands through soup spoons and blood pressure cuffs. Through fear, the airport speakers chimed. "Final call for Ellison Air Flight 2018 to Los Angeles, Gate 17A. Final boarding." Claire's heart pitched. She could sprint. She pictured herself lunging toward the gate, breathless, pleading at the door. The old man stared at the spreading wet on his lap as though it accused him of something unfixable. He cleared his throat, embarrassed. The choice offered itself clearly: make the plane or be the person she always claimed to be. She stayed. She repacked the bag with heavy items near the wheels and the lighter ones up top. Stashed the handle cap where it wouldn't pinch, buttoned his jacket to hide the watermark, tucked the handkerchief into his breast pocket neatly. She walked him to the departure screen and then toward his gate in the opposite direction of hers, keeping an eye on sloping floors and surprise curbs, on dreadfully designed door thresholds that swallowed the front wheels of roller bags. He told her he was going to Chicago, connecting through there. that he had a soft spot for the buttery pretzels near Gate K4, that some airports had lost their soul to smooth surfaces and mood lighting. He spoke like a person who had moved through terminals for decades and judged them not on architecture, but on whether a traveler could find comfort when something went wrong. By the time she hugged him goodbye at the concourse split and jogged back, Flight 2018 was a silver comma pushing away from the jet bridge, then a dot, then nothing. I was helping and Claire began at the counter, but the agent already wore the apologetic smile of people who can't change outcomes. I'm sorry, the woman said softly. We can try for the morning. Everything tonight is full. The apology was sincere, the system benign and immovable. Claire nodded. There was a hollowness under her breastbone where conviction had been. Now there was only the arithmetic of loss. 2 months of thrift. Her one shot to say aloud that cheap doesn't have to mean careless, that human attention is technology too. She took a breath that scraped on the way out and was about to step aside when the old man appeared, rolling his reorganized bag easily, the tremor less noticeable when he didn't have to drag 24 pounds of paper from the floor. You missed it, he said gently, not as a question but a sorrowful observation. I did, Claire said, and she surprised herself by smiling. But you got where you needed to go. That counts. He studied her, and a brightness tugged at the corner of his mouth, the kind of smile a grandfather gives when a child has done something right without needing praise. Do you know who I am? He asked, and he did not sound like a man eager to be recognized. He sounded curious how far compassion traveled without leverage. No, Claire said honestly. I'm Richard Ellison, he said, and let the name sit. The syllables assembled into a sign she'd seen on napkins and tray tables, on safety cards and app icons. Ellison Air, blue tail, white stripe, an airline that started as a regional scrapper and had somehow stayed personable while it grew. Claire blinked, glanced at the counter where the agent suddenly stood straighter. You own... I founded it, he said, a gentle correction, as if ownership was a legal detail and founding a matter of heart. These old hands tremble in more places than airports, Ms. Claire, she said, and shook his hand as though he were a neighbor and not a man whose name lived on dozens of aircraft parked outside. Claire Donovan. Claire Donovan, he repeated, savoring the syllables like a chef learning the name of a farmer who grows a secret ingredient. He turned to the agent. Let's put Ms. Donovan on a plane to Los Angeles immediately. Everything tonight is oversold, Mr. Ellison, but then not a plane, he said mildly. My plane. The conversation after that happened in the soft-booted hurry of people who are both discreet and efficient. Claire stammered reflexive refusal. No, truly, it's fine, I couldn't. While the ground team arranged a security escort to a private terminal, and a driver appeared like a conjured valet. Richard waved away her protests with a hand that had signed paychecks and sympathy cards for decades. You made a choice that cost you something, he said in the car, watching the endless choreography of yellow cabs outside. I built an airline by insisting the cheapest way to move people all day is to treat them with dignity before anything breaks. You reminded me why that still matters. The hangar air smelled faintly of fuel and cold metal, the way a mountain smells of stone. The jet was smaller than the sleek behemoths Claire had walked into through carpeted tubes all her life, but the cabin felt like a living room built by someone who loved light. She sank into a leather seat that didn't dare squeak, fingers tracing the neat stitching, then snatched her hand away as though she'd smudged a museum piece. A flight attendant with an unflappable smile asked what she'd like to drink. Water, Claire said, then added, please, suddenly aware that gratitude should move faster than thirst. In the air, the city receded, a quilt of orange and white giving way to veined rivers and the improbable geometry of fields. Richard fastened his belt and, when the climb evened out, turned toward her. Tell me about your hospital. Claire spoke of chipped tile and outdated monitors, of the way a nurse could round with 1 cup of tea and change an entire ward's mood, of Mr. Julius who would only take his blood pressure after hearing a joke, of Ms. Alvarez who calmed when someone sang the first line of Bésame Mucho, of tiny, replicable routines, a laminated card on the bed with big print names and faces of staff, a basket of spare reading glass, and